You're listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you want to step into your greatness, you've come to the right place. Here is your host, the human strength expert, Kyle Newell.
Hey everybody, it's Kyle from Unlocking Your Inner Strength and unlockingyourinnerstrength.com. And that's a mistake I've been making, guys. I haven't been telling you that, yes, I do have a website that goes along with the show. I'm posting more and more articles up there. There can be some really cool stuff up there. So definitely check that out if you can. You can also access the episodes of the Unlocking Your Inner Strength podcast through the website. So hopefully after last week, you have some more clarity and you were able to learn something from the lesson. What I want to go over this week for you is why I can only feel sympathy for dogs. Now let me explain. This is going to be a pretty cool offshoot of mind mapping. And I think you're going to learn a lot about the brain within this episode. But more importantly, what I want you to be able to take away from today's show something useful where you can start to recognize patterns in yourself and others that will allow you to more effectively and efficiently use your emotions and your time. I want to tell you about two different stories, same topic. The first story is when I blew out my first knee, which was my left knee, and we're coming up on this April will be 5 years. And that was the last time and the first time really in a long time in my life where I can remember that I actually felt sorry for myself. And it was only for about 2 days after I got injured. And I was in such a funk, something did not feel right. And I remember it was a Saturday night. This happened on a Thursday. I just snapped out of it. Boom. And I realized, okay, enough with this feeling. So this is not doing anything but dragging me down and those around me down. Fast forward 2.5 years from that point. So we're actually coming up on the 2-year anniversary of when I blew my right patellar tendon out. And my mindset was completely different. My mindset, when Dr. Getcha was putting me out for the surgery, I said something to him. And what I said to him, because he felt terrible that this happened again, was, Doc, look, don't worry about it. And I'm doing this while I'm getting, put out or hooking me up to everything. I said, everything's going to be fine. I've been through this before. I know the path. I'm going to learn more. And there's a silver lining. So when I went back to see Dr. Getcha for my checkup after that experience, was within a week. He said, hey, would you mind coming to talk to the surgeons and the doctors about what you said? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, before you went out, I've never heard anybody say something like that before. It's just such a unique mindset. And, I said, sure, I'd be glad to talk to them and explain where I was coming from. And he liked, that I had the background with the human body and things of that nature. So how did I get my brain to that point? Well, it's training. It's training your brain to look at certain things. And those two examples, one, okay, I felt sorry for myself. The other one, I saw the silver lining. Now, you're going to come across people in your life that want you to feel sorry for them. So when we realize what sorrow is or feeling sorry for somebody, we need to backtrack to the mammal brain to realize, I should say, what's going on. Because if we understand the brain and the way it operates with the triune brain theory, we're going to get clarity in a lot of different areas. That's actually pretty cool. So the mammal brain, right? That part of our brain, that's the midbrain. So you have the reptile mammal and the neocortex or the human brain. The mammal brain is where we feel emotion. That's connection. That's where we build bonds with people. That's experience. That's not where logical thought takes place. The reason that pet therapy works so well, and I didn't realize this until I was studying under Dax Moy to learn all about mind map, and it set me on that trail. But I was studying under him, and I had a therapy session one day, and my therapist said to me, Kyle, why do you, from what you tell me, act so differently around Martina than anybody else or anything else in your life? And I said, I don't really know. And then it clicked. It's because with mammals, right? So look at the dogs, or our dogs, I should say, Dax and Martina. Yes, Dax is named after Dax Moy. When you're with man's best friend, there's no judgment that can come from them. Judgment comes from the human part of the brain. So there's no threat, okay? But most people do not get to access, especially if they're very like type A or driven or whatnot, they don't access the emotional part of their brain enough, and it's hard for them to connect with others or be present in the moment. So when you're with a dog, or in that case, when I was with Martina by myself, there's no judgment. And when you make eye contact, you're connecting with it on a deep mammalian or mammal level, and it's emotional, right? There's a bond that's there. So that gives you some science into what's going on with that mammal brain. Now, one more thing. Remember this. The human part of your brain and the mammal brain are basically opposites. They function, opposing each other. So if you're overly emotional, logic goes out the window. And if you're super type A and very, very planned out, emotion gets diminished. All right? Keep that in mind. So most people, going back to what I was saying before, are going to want to have, their own little drama club. They're going to want you to have a pity party. And a pity party, and this is what was, when I was teaching, besides either the culture of negativity with just teaching staffs, but, they have that, and they also have their own drama clubs or pity parties. And a pity party, yes, you are connecting with other people, and you are emotionally on the same vibrational level as them. But get this, right? Sympathy is in the mammal part of the brain. The mammal part of the brain is not where action arises from, where goal setting, forward thought, logical thought, linear thinking. That comes from the human part of the brain, okay? And a lot of your creative thought, although some of that comes from the deeper part of the brain, a lot of that comes from the subconscious, but that's a different topic. So when emotion comes from that part of the brain, you can be sure that not a lot of stuff is going to make sense. And you start to realize that, if I'm going to feel sympathy for this other person, then, what good is it doing really? Because no action is going to arise out of that besides creating a downward spiral of negative emotions. Now, a quick aside, if you need to cry, cry. If you need to do you do that stuff, but then you move on. You don't let this drag on like I did with my first knee for 2 days. And I have not let that happen to me since, by the way. So you realize that sympathy doesn't get anybody anywhere, but most people want sympathy. Most people are walking around, an old Dan Kennedy thing, looking for a spot to plug back in their umbilical cord. They want someone to plug into. They don't want to take control of their life or responsibility for their life, but that's not you, because people that listen to a show like Unlocking Your Inner Strength are not the type of people that are your average Joes, or that are, not striving to do something great with your life. So you'll observe that, though, in a lot of other people. Now, if you think that it's cold and calculated to not be sympathetic, it's not. And I have trouble accessing that particular emotion. It's almost like I can't feel it. So when it comes to Devin, for example, I've learned, all right, first of all, I had to be given permission to coach. So unless she asked me for my input, if something was going wrong with her day or she had a tough day, then I should not give my input. And it's still hard sometimes. Sometimes I do. That's the nature of a man, right? But I need to catch myself, and I almost need to use logic to emote to her or kind of ask her, what do you need me to do in this case? What do you want me to do? Because I realize when people get in a state where they're feeling bad for themselves or they're feeling down for themselves, that they don't want to hear your optimistic view. That could be annoying to people. So sometimes you have to ask, hey, how do you want me to comfort you? How can I help you with this? You may not feel it, but you can at least logically get your head around it and act from there. So I have trouble accessing the sympathetic, I shouldn't say that because people are going to confuse that maybe with the nervous system, but the sympathy part of my brain. However, when I've done different personality tests, my empathy level or my ability to feel what other people are feeling is off the charts. My gut feeling is usually 99.9% of the time it's right. It's right on the money. So I can know what somebody else is feeling. And when one of my coaches that coaches me, who's a personality expert, ran my last test, or, the few times we've done it, the personality type that I have is one of the most rare. Only 2% of the population has that personality type. And I'm not saying that because it's not that one is good or bad, or one is better than the other, but I do know that the empathy feeling and the strength of my empathic centers, shall I call them, are very, very strong. So I can feel what you're feeling, but I can't feel sorry for people most of the time. And it's not just something I'm saying. I've trained my brain. I don't know if I've done that through all the theater of the mind and positive thinking and stuff like that, but I have a very difficult time with that. But to give you one more example of my empathic superpowers, Devin is pregnant, so we're expecting our second child Memorial Day weekend. But as far as my empathy goes, as far as feeling emotions from other people or physically what they're feeling, both times when Devin has gotten pregnant, I get the same exact empathy symptoms that she gets, even down to my skin being oily. It's very bizarre, but it's remember, the gut is where most of your neurons and neurotransmitters, I should say, and your immune system is based. And that's just a quick aside, a little weird thing about, I was talking about my empathy levels. So why don't you want to feel sympathy for other people? Because if people are feeling sorry for themselves, or they're in that state where they're getting depressed, they need a plan of action to get out of that state. You don't get out of that state by using your mammal brain. Follow me? So you can feel sorry, but you got to set a time limit on it if that's what you choose to do. But those types of people need a plan of action if they want to improve their life or get out of the current circumstance. And that goes back to another rule, which we'll be going over soon too, the rules 6 through 10, is that you are in control of everything that happens to you in your life. That's all I'll say about that. We'll come back to that when I do the next set of rules. I'm having trouble saying that word. But sympathy gets you nowhere. It's wasted energy typically, okay? They need somebody that can bring clarity to the situation. Now realize when somebody's overly in a sorrowful state, or they're looking for people to feel sympathy for them, they're emotional. Logic is not going to get through to them. The time to talk to them and come up with a game plan is not when they're sitting there crying or they're poor me, poor me, poor me. Okay, so what you can do is go for a walk with that person. Uses up the same energy centers or motor centers in the brain where emotion is housed when we locomote or when we move. So a lot of times if you're fired up, and this is a kind of a separate thing, but if you're overly emotional about something, you go for a walk. 10-minute walk does the trick. It burns up the energy. The emotions are dampened down. So to help somebody that's in one of these states, get them moving first. Get them breathing. Get them doing their belly breathing. And then you're going to use your clarity from an outside point of view and your logic to help them come up with a game plan to get out of this hole that they're in. So hopefully that's making sense and you're following along so far. Now, the brain is hardwired for the negative. So it is the natural thing for the brain to look at the negative side of things. The brain wants to focus on problems. But when it focuses on problems, and those are the deeper parts of the brain, right? The parts that feel judgment or, the anxiety gap and worry and future stuff that you can't control. The prefrontal cortex, the human part of our brain, the higher thinking one, wants to focus on solutions. Okay, that's the part of our brain that we have to access to get to self-actualization. But we cannot get there if we have other emotional things going on that are holding us back. So that is how the brain works in a nutshell as far as mind map. So to recap, you got the mammal brain. The mammal brain is the house of a lot of our emotions and the connection and experience. You have something called the anterior cingulate cortex that's located in that part of your brain. Now, that structure is actually larger in females than it is in men. Their brains are wired differently. Why would that be larger in females? It's larger in females because their primary role is to connect with their children and to build a family. I don't want to hear any feminist BS. I'm talking about how the brain evolved in the role of physiologically a female and a male for looking at their brain. It's diminished in males. Why would it be diminished in males, that part of your brain, the anterior cingulate cortex? Because estrogen actually makes that part of the brain enhanced or grow. Testosterone actually shrinks it and minimizes it. For men, if that part of the brain was too evolved, okay, they would get too connected if you go back thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago to one tribe, to one place. They were to go out and hunt and gather and not get too emotional. They were the problem solvers. So that's your mammal brain. Okay, in a recap. Empathy is your ability to feel what the other person's feeling, not the same as sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel simply sorry for somebody else. Nothing gets done when you're acting from that state. It doesn't benefit you and it doesn't benefit the other person. Get the other person up, get them moving, get them breathing, then bring logic and clarity to the situation. Pity parties, stay away from them. Pity parties are usually it's usually a gathering of like some type of time vampires where nothing productive will get done. Energy levels will come, flying out of the room. The energy will get deflated. And then you walk out and say, man, what the hell just happened to me? I feel like somebody just kind of, threw up in my garbage can. And they literally are. They're putting these negative emotions into the garbage, the container that is your brain. I don't want to call that a garbage can. But that's a recap. Now, another thing I was thinking about, this has nothing to do with sympathy. If you look at, to stereotype here, a lot of white guys, they are not good dancers. Why would that be? And it's a certain type of white guy. It is because there's so much in that human part of their brain. They're trying to think through the dance moves. Dancing is a bonding experience. It's an emotional thing. It's a different part of your brain. So you can see this stuff in nearly every social setting you're in if you know how to look for it. I just thought that was something interesting. There's something else going on with the brain as well, where perceived judgment is very, very threatening for the brain. Okay, but a lot of those, the feeling of judgment will arise in the mammal part of the brain, but then the human part of the brain takes over and starts worrying about it, getting anxiety, thinking, what if? So if these white guys are out there, first of all, they can't shut their human brain off, and they're also worried about judgment. Okay, because the brain picks up judgment as, man, if they judge me, they're going to kick me out of the tribe. Then we got an issue. So that was just a quick aside. Another cool thing I thought about with Mind Map. So if you have any questions, email me at kyle@kylenewell.com. I really appreciate the support. If you haven't had the chance yet to leave a review on iTunes, please do so. Good, bad, or the ugly. It'll help me get better. Spread the word to your friends if you've been liking what I've been putting out. And I got a really cool episode coming up for you next week. It has to do with Superman. And the struggles that you may be facing right now. So peace out. I'll be back next week.
You've been listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us in iTunes.